In the quiet town of Maple Hollow, Minnesota, winters came like clockwork, cold, relentless, and beautiful in their stillness. One morning, a young boy with fiery red hair ran laughing through the fresh snow, his boots leaving tiny prints across the backyard. 20 minutes later, those footprints stopped, and so did his parents' world. For 8 long years, Ethan and Claire Dawson had lived in the shadow of that morning. Maple Hollow was a close-knit town of barely 2,000 souls, a place where everyone waved from their porches and left their doors unlocked. Nothing bad ever happened there, until the day their 5-year-old son, Noah, vanished without a trace. Now, as another winter blanketed the town, Ethan sat at the dining table surrounded by police files that had yellowed with time. Witness reports, dead leads, false hopes. He stared at them as if one more read-through might reveal something everyone else had missed. Outside, snow drifted past the window, the same way it had that day 8 years ago. Claire moved quietly through the house, her soft cleaning sounds echoing like a rhythm of survival. Dusting, folding, straightening, small rituals to hold herself together. Their home felt frozen in time, as if it too refused to move forward without Noah. "Still looking through those?" she asked, pausing by the table with a laundry basket in her hands. Ethan nodded, flipping through another page. "Detective Palmer said they got a few new tips last month. Nothing solid." He didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what that meant. Still, they clung to every rumor, every fragment of hope that their boy might still be out there. Noah had been full of life that morning, begging to play outside, laughing as snowflakes melted on his lashes. Their backyard bordered a stretch of woods, a playground for local kids. Ethan remembered telling him he'd check on him in 20 minutes. When he stepped outside, the only thing left were the small prints that disappeared near the tree line. The search that followed tore the heart out of Maple Hollow. Volunteers combed the woods, divers broke through the ice on the frozen lake half a mile away, and police interviewed every single resident. But as days bled into weeks, then months, the search was called off. Only Ethan and Claire refused to stop. The doorbell rang, pulling Ethan out of his thoughts. He rose from the table, stretching stiff shoulders, and opened the door to find Harold Bennett, their neighbor from across the street. Harold was in his late 40s, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray creeping through his dark hair. Once a friendly face, he'd grown distant after losing his wife and son in a violent home robbery nearly a decade ago. "Morning, Ethan," Harold said, shifting awkwardly from one foot to the other. "Sorry to bother you, but last night's storm knocked part of your fence onto my property again." Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry about that, Harold. That fence has been falling apart for years. I'll grab my tools and clear it out once I fix my welder. It's been busted for weeks." Harold shook his head with a faint smile. "Don't worry about it. I already patched it up. Just wanted to let you know." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "You didn't have to do that. Thank you." "No problem," Harold replied with a shrug. "I was already out back working on a project anyway." Ethan chuckled lightly, trying to mask the uneasy feeling that crept up his spine. "Yeah, I thought I heard something earlier. You building something new back there?" Harold hesitated for half a beat before answering. "Just fixing up a few things. Sorry if the fence doesn't look perfect." Ethan smiled faintly. "Don't worry about it. It's an old fence anyway." As Harold nodded and turned to leave, Ethan couldn't shake the odd chill that lingered in the air. Not from the cold, but from something else he couldn't quite name. "Yeah, I thought I heard some noise earlier," Ethan said with a light chuckle, trying to mask the unease that always lingered in his conversations with Harold. "Figured you were building something back there." Harold gave a quick nod, but didn't elaborate. "Sorry if the fence doesn't look brand new," he said quietly, brushing snow from his gloves. "It's an old fence anyway," Ethan replied with a reassuring smile. "Thank you again, Harold." Harold simply nodded and turned away, his boots crunching through the snow as he crossed back toward his house. Something about his quiet, almost evasive tone stuck with Ethan longer than he cared to admit. When Ethan shut the door, he found Claire stepping in from the backyard, cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her scarf pulled loosely around her neck. "Was that Harold I heard?" she asked, hanging her scarf on the hook by the door. "Yeah," Ethan said, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "Our fence blew over again during the storm. He already fixed it himself." Claire's brows lifted slightly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "That's kind of him. You know, it's been forever since we've talked to him properly. Maybe we should invite him to dinner, thank him for helping out." Ethan hesitated, glancing toward the dining table littered with police reports. "I don't know, Claire. I was hoping to go over those new tips Detective Palmer sent. I'd rather focus on that tonight, not play host." Her expression softened, that familiar blend of sadness and gentle insistence. "Ethan, we've isolated ourselves for years. We hardly talk to anyone anymore. When was the last time we had company?" Ethan sighed. He didn't need to answer. She was right. Their world had shrunk to police reports, dead-end leads, and the empty ache of waiting. "Harold's been through his own loss," Claire continued quietly. "He lost his wife and son, remember? And he's been alone ever since. Maybe it'd do all of us some good to share a meal, just to feel normal again." Ethan looked at her, the way her hand rested gently on his shoulder, the faint hope in her eyes. Maybe she was right. Maybe a little normalcy wouldn't hurt. "All right," he said finally, the corner of his mouth lifting. "I'll go invite him." Claire's smile, warm and grateful, made the decision worth it. It had been so long since he'd seen that light in her face. Ethan zipped up his jacket and stepped out into the biting winter air. Snow crunched under his boots as he crossed the narrow street toward Harold's house, a modest two-story place that mirrored his own but looked a little more forgotten. The paint was chipped, the porch light flickered weakly, and snow had piled high across the walkway, untouched for days. He knocked once, waited. Then again, louder this time. Nothing. Just as he was about to turn away, a faint thudding sound drifted from the backyard. Steady, deliberate, like hammering against wood. Curiosity tugged him toward the sound. He followed the narrow path around the side of the house, his boots sinking deeper into the snow. "Harold," he called out. "It's Ethan, from across the street." At the far end of the yard stood an old dog kennel, half buried under snow, the same one that had been there since before Harold's tragedy. Ethan could see Harold crouched inside, working on something unseen. When Harold heard his voice, he froze mid-motion. Slowly, he backed out of the kennel, brushing snow off his coat. His breath came out in visible clouds, his tone slightly uneven. "Ethan," he said, forcing a smile. "Sorry, I didn't hear you knocking." "No problem," Ethan said lightly, though his eyes caught the way Harold had subtly shifted his stance, almost as if blocking the view of the doghouse behind him. "I'm just surprised you're still keeping that old thing. It's been years since you had a dog, hasn't it? I could help you tear it down if you want." Harold hesitated, his breath visible in the cold air. It's a reminder of Rex," he said finally, his voice low and uncertain. "He was a good dog. I like keeping it around." Ethan nodded, offering a small smile. He understood. People held on to different relics of the past. Some photos, some keepsakes, others, something harder to explain. Harold motioned toward a half-built wooden structure nearby, a larger, sturdier kennel rising from the snow. "Actually," Harold continued, "I've been thinking about getting another dog. I've been working on this one for a couple of weeks, just wanted to finish it up this morning." Ethan raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. "You're building in this weather? That's dedication." "I used to breed dogs when I was younger. Nothing serious, just a hobby. Got any breed in mind?" "Not really," Harold said after a short pause, sounding more relaxed now that the conversation had shifted. "Maybe a puppy, or a mid-sized dog. Haven't decided yet." "Well," Ethan said, smiling, "Claire and I were actually planning to invite you over for dinner tonight. But if you don't mind, I can help you finish this kennel first, and then we could head over to a local breeder I know. It's not far." Harold considered this for a moment, eyes narrowing as if weighing something unseen. Then he nodded slowly. I'd appreciate that. Should be able to finish this in a few hours. Dinner sounds nice too. Thank you. As they talked, Ethan couldn't help noticing how Harold kept glancing back at the old kennel, the one half buried in snow, the one that didn't seem to serve any purpose anymore. There was a nervous energy about him, subtle but unmistakable. Still, Ethan brushed it off. Maybe it was just awkwardness. Harold wasn't exactly the social type these days. All right then, Ethan said, stepping back toward the front yard. I'll leave you to it. Come over when you're ready to visit the breeder, and we'll see you around 6 for dinner. See you then, Harold replied, already turning back toward the doghouse, his posture tense. Ethan crossed the street, the cold biting at his cheeks. Something about the exchange sat uncomfortably in his chest. There was nothing outright suspicious. Harold had been polite, even friendly, but something about the way he guarded that old kennel gnawed at him. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the strange image of a lonely man rebuilding his life one wooden plank at a time. Back inside, Ethan stamped the snow from his boots and hung his jacket. Claire was in the living room, fluffing pillows and clearing clutter with an energy that only came from purpose. He said yes to dinner, Ethan announced. Claire looked up, her eyes brightening instantly. Really? That's wonderful. What time? 6, give or take. And get this, he's building a new doghouse. Says he's planning to get a dog. I even offered to take him to a breeder this afternoon. Claire froze mid-motion, surprise flickering across her face. A dog? After all these years? She smiled softly, her voice full of empathy. See, I told you, he's been lonely. Getting a pet might be his way of moving forward. Maybe, Ethan said, returning to the dining table where the police report still waited. It just caught me off guard. He's kept that old doghouse ever since Rex died, like a memorial. Claire moved toward the kitchen, her tone thoughtful. People grieve in their own ways, Ethan. Sometimes holding on is part of healing. Speaking of which, she added, opening the fridge, we're low on just about everything. I want to make something nice for tonight. Maybe pot roast? You'll need to grab groceries before the snow gets worse. Ethan nodded absently, glancing toward the window across the street. Harold's figure was still faintly visible, working quietly behind his house, snow swirling around him. Something about it made Ethan's stomach tighten, though he couldn't say why. Ethan exhaled quietly, staring at the mountain of papers spread across the table. He'd been hoping to spend the morning combing through those new police leads, revisiting dead ends that still haunted him, trying to spot something the detectives might have missed. Before the week swallowed him again, he wanted one more shot at understanding what had gone wrong all those years ago. Can you grab what we need? He asked absently, eyes still scanning a report. I really want to get through these documents today. Claire looked up from where she was wiping the counter, her expression soft but persistent. I'd rather finish cleaning for tonight. You know how I get when the house isn't ready for guests, she said with a faint smile. And I don't exactly drive well in this weather. It's freezing, too cold to walk, and I'm not waiting for the bus. Ethan met her gaze, guilt prickling beneath his weariness. She rarely asked for anything anymore. After 8 years of grief, small things, like wanting to cook dinner for a neighbor, had become her way of feeling normal again. He couldn't deny her that. All right, he relented, forcing a smile. I've got some time before Harold's done with his kennel anyway. I'll handle the groceries, drop everything off, and then see if he's ready to go to the breeder. The gratitude in Claire's eyes made the compromise worth it. She quickly scribbled a shopping list, adding items between glances at the pantry and refrigerator. Ethan took it, kissed her cheek, and headed out. The cold hit him like a wall as he shoveled a narrow path to the car. His breath puffed out in thin white clouds as he started the engine and let it idle. The heater groaned to life, and for a moment, the sound filled the silence that had become his morning routine. He was just about to pull out of the driveway when movement caught his eye. Harold was crossing the street toward him, coat collar pulled high against the wind. "Ethan," Harold called out, his voice muffled by the scarf around his neck. Ethan rolled down the window. "Hey, all finished with the doghouse already?" Harold shook his head, looking slightly distracted. "Actually, I just remembered. I've got plans to meet some friends this morning. Gonna have to cancel the breeder trip, but I'll still come by for dinner tonight." "Sure thing," Ethan said, a little surprised. "No problem at all. I'm just heading out for groceries. See you at 6. Harold gave a quick nod and turned back toward his house, boots crunching over the snow. Ethan watched him go, that uneasy feeling creeping up again. Friends? In all the years they'd been neighbors, Harold had never once mentioned having friends, never hosted anyone, never left for social gatherings. But then again, who was Ethan to judge? They'd both become ghosts in their own ways. He shook off the thought and started driving. The supermarket was nearly empty. Most people were likely hunkered down, avoiding the incoming storm. Ethan pushed the cart down the aisles, ticking off items from Claire's list, occasionally adding something extra he knew she liked. He moved on autopilot, his thoughts wandering between the grocery shelves and old police reports that never seemed to lead anywhere. By the time he stepped outside, the sky had darkened. Heavy gray clouds rolled low and thick, promising more snow before nightfall. As he loaded the bags into the car, a flash of blue on the road caught his attention. A familiar sedan glided past the parking lot entrance, Harold's blue Chevy. Ethan blinked, straightening in disbelief. Through the clear window glass, he could see Harold behind the wheel, alone, driving in the opposite direction from their neighborhood. Curiosity tugged harder than reason. Ethan pulled onto the main road, following at a distance without meaning to. A few minutes later, Harold's car slowed, signaling right into a small parking lot marked Northwoods Kennels, the exact breeder Ethan had mentioned earlier that morning. Ethan frowned, coasting past slowly. So much for meeting friends. For a moment, he considered pulling in, confronting Harold, maybe even offering to help choose the dog after all. But what would he say? The man was entitled to his privacy. Maybe he just didn't want company. Still, something about the lie felt unnecessary. Harmless, perhaps, but strange. Why pretend to have plans just to go alone? Ethan drove on, but the question gnawed at him all the way home. Light snow had started falling again when he pulled into the driveway. Claire was already in the kitchen when he walked in, sleeves rolled up, a gentle hum escaping her as she chopped vegetables. "You're back sooner than I expected," she said, taking one of the grocery bags from him. "Yeah," Ethan replied, setting down the rest. Roads were clear, not many people out. He hesitated, glancing toward the window. "Actually, I saw Harold at the kennel on my way back." "The kennel?" Claire asked, pausing mid-motion as she unpacked a bag of flour. Ethan nodded, setting the rest of the groceries on the counter. "Yeah, he told me he had plans with some friends, but I saw him pulling into Northwoods Kennels by himself." Claire frowned lightly, but kept her tone calm. "That's odd, but maybe he just wanted to look on his own. You know how private he is." "Maybe," Ethan said, though doubt lingered in his voice. Something about the whole thing didn't sit right. They worked in quiet rhythm, putting groceries away while snow drifted steadily outside. When Ethan glanced out the kitchen window, he froze. Across the street, Harold's car had just pulled into his driveway. The trunk was open, and inside sat a metal kennel, and within it, a German Shepherd. "He's back already," Ethan murmured. "Looks like he bought a German Shepherd." Claire joined him at the window, peering through the falling snow. "That was fast," she said softly. "He must have really connected with that dog." "Yeah," Ethan replied, though his brow furrowed. "Still strange. When I used to breed dogs, the process always took time. Paperwork, background checks, the works. He was in and out in less than half an hour." They watched as Harold struggled to drag the kennel across his snow-covered yard, the dog inside shifting restlessly. "He's having trouble," Ethan said, already reaching for his coat. "I'll go give him a hand." Before Claire could object, he was out the door, boots crunching through the snow. "Need a hand with that?" he called. Harold's head jerked up, eyes flashing with something that looked like alarm before he quickly masked it. No, I'm fine, he said sharply. His tone carried an edge that didn't match the situation. I'll see you this evening, he added briskly, turning his back as if to close the conversation. Ethan hesitated, caught off guard by the hostility. All right, if you're sure. Harold just nodded without looking up, his gloved hands tightening on the kennel as he wrestled it toward the backyard. Crossing the street again, Ethan couldn't shake the heaviness settling in his chest. Harold's behavior, his guarded tone, his quick deflection, it all felt wrong. But what was he supposed to think? The man had been through hell. Maybe he was just uncomfortable being helped. When Ethan stepped back into the warmth of his house, Claire looked up from setting the table. He didn't want help? No, Ethan said, shrugging off his jacket. Said he's fine. Claire smiled faintly. Some people don't like being helped. It makes them feel exposed. Yeah, maybe, Ethan muttered, though unease still lingered. The hours stretched slowly as snow piled higher outside, blanketing Maple Hollow in fresh white silence. Ethan returned to his papers, flipping through old reports and faded photos that had become all too familiar. There was nothing new, just the same hollow promises of leads that went nowhere. A vague sighting 200 miles south, a boy enrolled under a different name in Montana, each one unraveling under scrutiny, each one reopening the wound. 8 years of false hope had left scars deeper than time could reach, but giving up wasn't an option. Somewhere out there, Noah might still be waiting. As evening fell, the rich scent of pot roast filled the house. Claire had gone all out. Fresh rolls, roasted vegetables, even an apple pie cooling by the window. The soft clink of plates and silverware echoed like a heartbeat in the quiet kitchen. Do you think he'll actually come? Ethan asked, folding napkins beside the plates. Claire smiled gently. Of course. Why wouldn't he? I don't know, Ethan admitted, frowning toward the window. He's just been strange all day. The canceled plans, the lie about meeting friends, the way he reacted when I offered to help. Claire touched his arm lightly. Ethan, sometimes people act strange when they're trying to heal. Let's not read too much into it. Ethan nodded, though the tension in his gut didn't ease. Something about Harold Bennett and that dog felt like the start of a story that hadn't yet revealed its ending. Ethan trailed off, unsure how to explain the uneasy feeling twisting in his chest. Something about Harold's behavior that day didn't sit right, but even as he tried to form the words, they slipped away like smoke. He's probably just nervous, Claire said softly, reading his thoughts. After being alone that long, socializing again can feel strange. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Ethan nodded, though doubt lingered at the edge of his mind. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Harold stood on the porch, his coat dusted with snow, holding a bottle of red wine like a peace offering. Hope this is all right, he said, handing it to Ethan. Perfect, Ethan replied warmly. Come on in before you freeze out there. Claire greeted him with a kind smile, taking his coat and thanking him for coming. For a moment, the awkwardness between them hung in the air like frost. But as they sat down with drinks, the tension began to thaw. Dinner started with polite conversation, safe topics that danced around anything personal. The weather, the state of the roads, the town's quiet winter routines. It was pleasant enough, though there was a faint strain under Harold's carefully measured tone, as if he were forcing himself to appear normal. As the meal went on, Ethan finally steered the talk toward the one thing on his mind. So, he said casually, I saw you brought home a German Shepherd. How's it settling in? Harold's fork stopped midair. For a heartbeat, his expression flickered, tension tightening his shoulders before he forced a small smile. It's fine, he said slowly, still adjusting to the new environment. That was a quick trip, Ethan remarked, swirling his wine. I saw you heading to Northwoods earlier, right after you mentioned meeting friends. Guess your plans changed. Harold's eyes darted to Ethan, then away. Yeah, he said, voice a bit too quick. My friend canceled last minute, and I was already thinking about the dog, so I just went ahead. Ethan smiled, but his gaze stayed steady. I was surprised they processed everything so fast. When I used to breed, there was always paperwork, background checks. It took a while. Harold shifted in his chair, the motion stiff. Actually, I'd ordered the dog a few days ago, he said after a pause. Today was just pickup. The answer sounded reasonable, but Ethan couldn't shake the inconsistency. That morning, Harold hadn't even known what breed he wanted. Now, suddenly, he'd ordered 1 day in advance? He said nothing, only nodded and took another sip of wine. But his eyes caught a faint tremor in Harold's hand as he reached for his glass, the nervous rhythm of a man hiding something. Claire, ever sensitive to tension, gently steered the conversation elsewhere. Harold, Ethan mentioned you lost your wife and son 10 years ago. I'm so sorry. We know what that kind of loss feels like. For the first time, Harold's expression softened. Thank you, he said quietly. It's been hard, living alone all this time. Claire nodded. After our son disappeared, her voice faltered, emotion catching in her throat. But before she could continue, Harold's demeanor shifted sharply. His jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the window where snow now whipped in heavy gusts. I'm very sorry, he said abruptly, pushing back his chair. I should check on my dog. It's snowing harder than I thought. The poor thing's new. It might be nervous. Ethan frowned, glancing outside at the storm. You left it in the kennel? It's getting rough out there. Want a hand bringing it in? No! Harold's voice cracked like a whip. He caught himself, then forced a calmer tone. No, I'll handle it. It's a big dog, and it's still getting used to me. Strangers might scare it. Claire rose, ever the peacemaker. Of course. Go take care of it. We're right across the street. Don't rush back if you need to settle it in. Harold nodded quickly, grateful for the out. Grabbing his gloves but forgetting his coat on the rack, he stepped back into the swirling snow, his figure swallowed by the white haze beyond the porch light. Ethan stood watching the door long after it closed, the echo of Harold's abrupt exit filling the silence. The warmth of the room felt thinner now, like something unseen had followed him out into the night. Claire sighed softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. Well, she said after a moment, that was odd. Ethan didn't answer. The uneasiness that had been simmering all day was now a steady pulse beneath his ribs. Something about Harold Bennett wasn't adding up, and deep down, Ethan feared he was finally beginning to understand why. That was strange, Ethan murmured, his fork idly tracing circles on his plate. Claire refilled their wine glasses, her expression calm. He's probably just worried about the dog. First night in a new place. It's understandable. I suppose, Ethan said, though his tone betrayed reluctance. He couldn't shake the image of Harold's abrupt exit, the unease in his voice when he'd mentioned the dog. Something about it gnawed at him, faint but insistent. Claire sighed softly, her eyes fixed on the flickering candle between them. Ethan, imagine if I were gone, and it was just you in this house all these years. You'd find your own ways to cope too. Harold's been living like that for a decade, alone, grieving, trying to keep himself together. Maybe the dog's his way of holding on to something good again. Ethan nodded faintly but said nothing. The minutes stretched. The pot roast cooled. The apple pie on the counter went untouched. Outside, the snow thickened, wrapping Maple Hollow in layers of silence. Half an hour passed. Still no sign of Harold. It's all right if he doesn't make it back, Claire said finally, rising from the table to gather plates. The dog's new. Maybe it's nervous. He's probably trying to settle it down. She moved toward the kitchen, but paused when her gaze fell on the coat rack. Oh, he forgot his coat, she said, frowning. It's freezing out there. Ethan stood immediately, the unease in his chest returning in full. I'll take it over. He shouldn't be out there without it. Claire nodded absently, already stacking dishes. All right, but don't stay too long. The snow's getting worse. Ethan grabbed both his jacket and Harold's heavy wool coat before stepping out into the storm. The night swallowed him in cold. Snowflakes spun wildly under the streetlights, glowing like drifting embers against the dark sky. Each step crunched sharply beneath his boots as he crossed the street, the air sharp enough to sting his lungs. Harold's house stood in near darkness, only a faint amber light spilling from a back window. The front door was shadowed, the porch buried under snow that no one had cleared. Ethan knocked firmly. "Harold, it's Ethan. I've got your coat." He waited. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time, the sound echoing dully through the frozen air. Still no response. Frowning, Ethan glanced at his watch. It had been over 30 minutes since Harold had left their house. Surely it didn't take that long to bring a dog inside. A sudden bark shattered the stillness. It came from behind the house, low, frantic, and cold. Ethan hesitated only a moment before following the sound. "Harold," he called out, his voice carrying through the storm. "It's Ethan. You out here?" The backyard came into view, faintly lit by the glow spilling from the kitchen window. There, the German shepherd paced anxiously in the snow, its chain clinking as it strained against the collar. The doghouse nearby looked far too small for an animal its size. The sight made Ethan's gut twist. Harold had left the poor thing out in this weather. But where was Harold? Ethan scanned the yard. No movement, no sign of footprints except the dog's restless circling. He glanced toward the unfinished, larger kennel. The one Harold had said he'd finish. A chill ran through Ethan's body that had nothing to do with the snow. The longer he stood there, the heavier. The silence around Harold's backyard seemed to grow. Thick, suffocating, almost expectant. He tucked his phone back into his pocket, glancing at the restless German shepherd. The animal's bark suddenly sharpened, no longer a warning bark, but something desperate, frantic. At first, Ethan thought the dog was reacting to him, but then he realized its gaze wasn't fixed on him at all. It was staring directly at the old doghouse, muscles tense, alternating between growls and pitiful whines. Frowning, Ethan took a cautious step closer, his boots crunching softly in the snow. From a different angle, something caught his eye, a faint metallic reflection beneath the doghouse's roofline. Squinting, he saw it clearly now. A wooden floor panel with a recessed metal handle and an old padlock, left unlocked, resting loosely on top. The structure wasn't just a kennel, it was hiding something. A wave of unease rippled through him. Years ago, Ethan had bred dogs. He knew how to read their behavior. This wasn't fear, it was distress. The German shepherd wasn't warning him away. It wanted him to see something. Speaking softly, Ethan approached the dog, his voice low and steady. "Easy there, boy. It's all right." The dog whimpered but didn't back away. Slowly, Ethan reached out, unclipping the chain from its collar and reattaching it to a nearby post, giving it more room to move while keeping it clear of the doghouse. The dog immediately sat, watching him intently, ears pinned and body rigid. Ethan crouched in front of the kennel, brushing snow from the wooden surface. The panel beneath his hand wasn't part of the original structure. It had been reinforced, fitted with metal brackets and hinges. He tugged lightly at the handle. It was solid, heavy, like the hatch of an old fallout shelter. A dull chill of dread crawled down his spine. Why would Harold Bennett, quiet, reclusive Harold, build a bunker under a doghouse? Straightening, Ethan stepped back, his pulse pounding. None of this made sense. Harold had been secretive all day, lying about small things, avoiding eye contact, growing nervous whenever conversation veered too close to the truth. He needed to tell Claire. Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed home. "Claire," he said the moment she answered, his breath visible in the freezing air. "I found something strange. There's a trapdoor, some kind of bunker, under Harold's doghouse." "A bunker?" Her voice was laced with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious. There's a handle, a latch, even a padlock, and it's unlocked. The dog's still chained outside, but Harold's nowhere to be found. His car's here, lights are off, and he's not answering his phone." Claire was silent for a moment. "Ethan, do you think he might be down there? Maybe he fell or got stuck somehow?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, scanning the yard again. "But if he's down there, Something's not right. Who hides a bunker under a doghouse? It could be dangerous, Claire said firmly. Don't go near it. I'll call the police right now. Tell them it's a welfare check. Say you think our neighbor might be trapped. Ethan nodded automatically, his eyes still locked on the small, unassuming structure. All right, but hurry. I'll wait here until they arrive. Ethan, promise me you won't go down there, Claire said urgently. Just come home and wait for them. I promise, he said quietly. I'll be right back. But as the call ended, Ethan didn't move. His breath came out in short, visible puffs, the night eerily still around him, except for the faint rattle of the dog's chain and the low whimpering that refused to stop. He stared at the trap door, torn between reason and the gnawing pull of curiosity. Then it came, a noise from beneath the ground, a metallic clang, then another, footsteps, slow, deliberate, climbing up a ladder. Ethan froze, eyes wide, every instinct telling him to back away. The wooden panel rattled, scraped, then shifted upward with a creaking groan. The old padlock rolled aside as the hatch opened. A figure emerged from the darkness below, Harold, crawling awkwardly through the narrow space. His face was pale, drawn tight, his breath visible in the cold. For a split second, pure shock flickered across his expression when he saw Ethan standing there. Then it changed, his eyes narrowing, his mouth tightening into something that wasn't fear anymore. It was anger, or maybe something even darker. Harold's voice was calm but tight as a wire when he said, "Ethan, what are you doing here?" And Ethan held up the forgotten coat like a small, undeniable accusation. "You left this at our house. When you didn't come back, I thought I'd bring it over. I got worried when you didn't answer the door, and then I heard the dog barking, still out in the cold." Harold took the coat with slow, deliberate fingers, eyes flicking away as if the fabric itself might reveal something he preferred hidden. "Thanks. Yeah, the dog's not warming up to me yet. I'm not sure about bringing it inside," he offered, voice thin, and that answer felt like a closing door. Ethan's gaze went to the open hatch rimmed in snow and the dark square of the trap door, blunt and impossible to ignore. "What's down there, Harold?" Harold stiffened, his back flattening into a wall. "Nothing that concerns you," he said, but the words landed hollow. Ethan pressed, steady, afraid to let the lead slip. "I started worrying when you wouldn't pick up and your car's still here. What's really going on?" Harold didn't answer directly. He glanced instead at the German shepherd, then snapped, "You moved my dog," as if possession could pivot attention away from the buried truth. Ethan explained calmly that he'd unhooked the dog to calm it, because it kept barking at the doghouse, and Harold's jaw clenched like a trap, a momentary flash of something between shame and rage. Ethan stepped forward, blunt and urgent. "Why lie to me all day? You said you'd finish that bigger kennel this morning, yet it's barely started. You said you were meeting friends, but you went alone to the breeder. What's with the secrecy?" The wind and the dog's faint whining were the only answers, the cold air squeezing the conversation tight. And then Harold moved. Sudden, violent, propelled by fear, and whatever darker thing had been nesting under his skin. He shoved into Ethan with a force that knocked the older man back, grabbing his jacket and throwing him off balance. Snow flew in a stinging spray as they grappled, Harold's face twisting between rage and panic, a strangled voice snarling, "Mind your own business," before a fist hammered into Ethan's ribs with a hard, breath-stealing impact. Ethan doubled over but stayed on his feet, the training of long workdays and grief-hardened resolve keeping him from collapsing, and he blocked a wild swing toward his head, shoving Harold off enough to circle wide and demand, "What are you hiding?" Harold charged again, a knee finding Ethan's gut and folding him forward until the world narrowed to pain and cold. Then, with a brutal shove, Harold drove him toward the yawning trapdoor as if the earth itself would swallow the questions. "Get in," Harold hissed, voice flat. "Crawl down." Ethan straightened through the pain, refusing to be bullied into surrender. And that was when Harold produced the gun, silent and horrible in the snowy dim. leveling it with terrible, casual clarity. "Your choice. Go down, or I'll drop your body in." For a heartbeat, the gun's metallic smell and the cruel simplicity of the threat froze Ethan. But he steadied his breath, keeping his voice low and loud enough for the night to carry. "The police are on their way," Claire called them. "If you fire, everyone will hear." Harold's face tightened, fury warring with something raw, and instead of pulling the trigger, he crashed the butt into Ethan's face, a blow that cracked skin and sent hot blood trickling into his eye. Pain blurred the edges but didn't stop him, and with a desperate, practiced grab, Ethan clamped onto Harold's wrist, twisted until the weapon skittered free and tumbled from leather into the dark mouth of the bunker, clanging out of sight, while Harold lunged with the panic of a man who'd already lost everything he thought he could control. In one desperate motion, Ethan kicked the gun away, the metal clattering across the doghouse floor before disappearing into the gaping dark of the bunker below. Harold's eyes flared with panic and fury. He lunged again, but this time Ethan was ready. Sidestepping and twisting sharply, he caught Harold by the arm and used his momentum to hurl him sideways into the doghouse wall. The structure shuddered under the impact. For a heartbeat, both men froze in the soundless, icy night. Then came the distant rise of sirens, thin at first, then swelling into a shrill, undeniable wail that sliced through the cold air like an alarm from another world. Harold's head snapped toward the sound. Panic cracked through his fury. "No," he muttered, voice shaking, but it was too late. Two police cruisers skidded to a stop in front of the house, red and blue lights flashing across the snow in a kaleidoscope of color. The officers spilled out, weapons drawn, their breath steaming in the cold. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" one shouted. Ethan and Harold both raised their hands. Ethan immediately, Harold hesitantly, his eyes darting toward the open trap door as if calculating some last escape. The officers separated them quickly. One guided Ethan back, noticing the blood streaking down from the cut above his eye. "Sir, are you injured?" "I'm fine," Ethan rasped, breathing hard. "He attacked me. There's a gun down there. Fell into the bunker." Claire appeared from across the street, bundled in her coat, her face pale with fear. "Ethan," she cried, rushing toward him. "Oh my God, you're bleeding." "It's nothing," he said, brushing her hand away gently. "I'm all right." He quickly explained everything: the lies, the hidden bunker, Harold's erratic behavior, the attack. "He pulled a gun on me," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "It's down there somewhere. I kicked it in." The officers turned to Harold, who stood silent in the snow, his breath coming in short, angry bursts. "Sir, is that true?" one of them asked. "Did you threaten this man with a firearm?" Harold said nothing. The only sound was the wind and the low growl of the German shepherd chained nearby. "You're under arrest," the officer said finally, stepping forward to cuff him. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the Miranda warning was read, another patrol car pulled up, followed by an ambulance. Paramedics moved in to check Ethan's injuries while two more officers swept flashlights over the yard. One of them paused at the open hatch. "There's something down here," he called. "Looks like an underground room. Metal stairs leading down." Ethan and Claire exchanged a wary look just as a noise echoed from below, a hollow metallic clang, the unmistakable sound of movement. Everyone froze. The officer by the hatch aimed his flashlight downward, his other hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Hold position," he warned. Then came the scraping sound of footsteps on metal rungs, slow, deliberate, climbing upward. The officers drew their guns, the light from their flashlights cutting sharp beams through the swirling snow. A head appeared first, small, pale, crowned with tangled red hair. Then a boy, thin and trembling, crawled up from the darkness and blinked against the blinding light. He couldn't have been older than 13. His clothes hung loose on his frame, his skin so pale it seemed translucent, and clutched in his shaking hands was Harold's missing gun. "Drop the weapon," an officer shouted. The boy's eyes darted wildly from face to face, terrified. He stumbled backward, gripping the gun tighter, pointing it in all directions without control. "Dad!" he shouted suddenly, voice cracking. His gaze found Harold, and the look that crossed the older man's face was one of raw, broken disbelief. "I won't let them take you," the boy cried. "I'll protect you, Dad. Like you said, I'll be a soldier." His voice trembled, tears spilling down his cheeks. "You said the enemy would come. I won't let them win." The officers froze, exchanging glances, caught between danger and pity. One of them stepped forward cautiously. "Son," he said gently, "it's okay. You're safe now. Just put the gun down. It's not safe for you to hold that." But the boy shook his head violently. "No, Dad taught me. The country's at war. You're the enemy." His finger twitched near the trigger. Ethan stood still, his heart pounding, his mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. The boy's face, those freckles, that hair, that small scar near his temple. It all felt impossibly familiar. The air left his lungs in a single, trembling whisper. "Joshua." The name hung in the cold air like a ghost. The boy turned his gaze toward him, eyes narrowing in confusion. Ethan stepped forward, ignoring the paramedic's warning grip on his arm. "Joshua," he said again, voice thick with disbelief and desperate hope. "It's me. It's Dad." The boy's hands shook harder, the gun wavering. "You're lying," he whispered, fear and uncertainty flickering across his face. "Dad's right here." Ethan's voice cracked as he took another step. "No, son. He's not your father. He took you from us." The snow fell silently between them, the boy trembling under the flashing red and blue lights, the truth pressing in like the cold itself. And for the first time in 8 years, Ethan Coulter stood face to face with the son he thought he'd never see again. Ethan's throat tightened as he forced out the words. "Your mother and I, we're your real parents, Joshua." The boy's face twisted in confusion, the trembling in his hands worsening as he clutched the gun like a lifeline. "You're lying," he said hoarsely, though the certainty in his tone faltered. "You just want to hurt us. You hate us." His lower lip quivered. "Dad said Mom died in the war, shot by the military." Claire stepped forward, her face streaked with tears that glistened under the flashing lights. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. The same wallpaper she'd never changed, staring back at her. She saw a bright, freckled 5-year-old boy with messy red hair and a smile that once filled their home with laughter. "You were kidnapped," she whispered, holding the phone out for him to see. "You've been gone 8 years, baby. We never stopped looking for you." Her voice broke on the last words. "We missed you every single day." Joshua's wide eyes flicked from the photo to her tear-streaked face, the world tilting beneath his feet. "But, Dad said," he began, turning toward Harold as if begging him to explain the sudden collapse of his entire life. But Harold wouldn't look at him. He stood rigid, head bowed, his cuffed hands trembling as the weight of silence crushed what little remained of his lies. One of the officers, moving gently, stepped in and eased the gun from Joshua's shaking hands. The boy didn't fight. He just stared at the photo glowing softly in the cold night, confusion and recognition warring in his eyes. "We're not in a war," Joshua said finally, his voice so small it nearly vanished into the wind. "No, sweetheart," Claire replied softly, her hand trembling as she reached out. "There's no war. Harold made you believe that, but it wasn't real. He's not your father. We are." Joshua hesitated, then let her fingers brush his hand. The contact was tentative, fragile, but it was something real, something his heart recognized even before his mind could. For the first time in years, his guard fell, and tears slipped down his pale cheeks. The paramedics moved in carefully, wrapping him in a thermal blanket and leading him toward the waiting ambulance. Claire followed close behind, afraid that if she let go, he might disappear again. Ethan stood frozen in the snow, his pulse thundering in his ears as joy, disbelief, and grief all collided inside him. An officer approached, speaking gently. Sir, we'll need to get your statement soon, but first let's have those injuries checked. Ethan nodded absently, his gaze never leaving the ambulance where his wife now sat beside their son. Their little boy, who had been just across the street all along. 8 years of searching, of endless dead ends, had led to this impossible, heartbreaking miracle. The next hours blurred together in a haze of movement and emotion. Paramedics cleaned and bandaged the cut above Ethan's eye, checked his ribs, and pronounced him lucky. Physically, he'd heal. Emotionally, he wasn't sure what healing even meant anymore. Inside the ambulance, Joshua sat bundled in blankets, answering soft questions from the officers and medics. He looked lost, small, and exhausted. "Everything's different than what Harold, told me," he murmured, the name catching awkwardly in his throat. Detective Martinez, a calm-voiced woman with kind eyes, crouched beside him. "Joshua, I know this is confusing. Can you tell us what life was like with Harold? Did he ever hurt you?" Joshua shook his head slowly. "No, he just trained me. A lot. Made me run, dig, lift weights. Taught me how to shoot." His brow furrowed, voice trembling. "He said I had to be ready, that there was a war and I'd need to protect myself when he couldn't anymore. He said the bunker was for when it got too dangerous outside." His words hung in the air like frost. Claire covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Ethan felt something inside him break, part relief that Joshua was alive, part horror at what those missing years had done to him. And as the snow kept falling over Maple Hollow, it felt as though the entire town was holding its breath, witness to a story that had begun in tragedy and at long last was finding its way back into the light. Detective Martinez's voice was steady but kind as she asked, "Do you know what year it is, Joshua?" The boy hesitated, his brow knitting in confusion. "Dad, Harold, said it doesn't matter down there," he murmured. "He said time works differently during wartime." Martinez exchanged a glance with Ethan before replying softly, "It's 2007, Joshua. You've been missing for 8 years." Joshua's eyes flickered, disbelief crossing his pale face. "8 years?" he repeated, voice cracking. "I've been in the bunker as long as I can remember. Harold said it was too dangerous outside, that the war was everywhere." His gaze lifted to the quiet, snow-covered neighborhood beyond the ambulance window. The streetlights glowing, neighbors peeking from behind curtains, the gentle swirl of snowflakes undisturbed by gunfire or chaos. "But there is no war, is there?" Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, son, there's no war. There never was." Across the street, Harold sat in the back of a police cruiser, wrists cuffed, eyes shadowed and unreadable. He watched them through the glass, motionless, like a man staring into the wreckage of his own delusions. An officer approached the ambulance, snow dusting his hat. "Detective," he said, "we found something in the bunker. It's fully stocked. Food, water, medical gear, textbooks, even a generator and filtration system. Looks like he was ready to live down there for years." He hesitated. "We also found several silenced firearms, just like the boy described." Martinez exhaled slowly. "Sounds like he was preparing for a long siege." She turned to Joshua again. "Did Harold ever let you leave the bunker?" Joshua shook his head, his small voice heavy with the weight of years. "Never. He said it was too dangerous. Sometimes he'd go out for supplies. Said he was helping other people who were hiding too. He told me that when I got older I could help him." Ethan's chest tightened, his mind spinning as the full horror of it crystallized. 8 years of lies, isolation, and control. "The dog," he said suddenly, realizing the connection. "He bought the German Shepherd to guard the bunker, and that new kennel he was building, it wasn't for a new pet. He was expanding the cover over the trapdoor." Martinez nodded grimly. "That's exactly what we think. He must have known Joshua was getting older, more curious, harder to control. The dog was meant to keep anyone, maybe even Joshua himself, from getting too close to the truth." As they spoke, a forensic team arrived. The once quiet street transforming into a flood of flashing lights, camera flashes, and murmuring officers. Yellow tape cordoned off Harold's property as curious neighbors gathered at the edges of the snow, whispering in disbelief. Eventually, the paramedics decided Joshua needed to be taken to Maple Hollow Memorial Hospital for a full examination. Years without sunlight or proper nutrition could have left unseen marks on his health. "Can we go with him?" Claire asked, her voice trembling with desperation. "Please, we just found him." The paramedics exchanged sympathetic looks and nodded. Moments later, the ambulance pulled away, its siren cutting softly through the snow, with Ethan and Claire riding alongside their son, their miracle. Inside, the mood was fragile. Joshua sat wrapped in blankets, staring out the window, his mind struggling to bridge the gap between two worlds, the one he'd been taught to fear and the one he'd just re-entered. Ethan and Claire kept a quiet distance, letting him breathe, knowing that to him, they were strangers who felt familiar in a way he couldn't yet explain. At the hospital, doctors began their examinations while Ethan and Claire waited in a small room, the walls humming faintly with fluorescent light. Detective Martinez joined them, her expression somber but composed. "Harold isn't saying much," she began, flipping open her notepad. "But from what Joshua's told us and what we've found, it seems he kidnapped your son the day he went missing. He had that bunker already in place. After his own wife and son were killed in a home invasion 10 years ago, he became unstable, obsessed with protection, survival, the idea that the world was collapsing around him." Ethan nodded slowly, exhaustion heavy in his voice. "He never recovered. I think he built that bunker to protect his family, but after they died, he lost touch with reality. And then he took mine." The detective's gaze softened. "What he did was monstrous, but it came from a mind broken by grief. He created a war that didn't exist and trapped your son in it." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "He stole 8 years from our boy," she whispered. 8 years we'll never get back." Martinez placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "But you found him. He's alive. That's what matters now. The rest, we'll help you rebuild together." Outside, dawn was beginning to break over Maple Hollow, casting a faint golden light over the snow. For the first time in nearly a decade, the Coulters had hope again. And though the scars of the past would take time to heal, the long night that had begun 8 years earlier was finally ending. Detective Martinez nodded gravely. That kind of loss, losing his wife and son so violently, likely triggered the break that led to all this. Claire wiped at her tears, her voice trembling. 8 years of lies. Our poor boy doesn't even know what the world really is." "The psychological recovery will be difficult," Martinez said gently. "But children are incredibly resilient. With patience, therapy, and your support, he has every chance of finding his way back to a normal life." At that moment, Dr. Patel, the pediatrician who had examined Joshua, stepped in holding a clipboard. "Physically," she began, "he's malnourished and has signs of vitamin D deficiency, which is expected given the lack of sunlight. His muscle development is below average for his age, but," she offered a small, reassuring smile, "there are no signs of physical abuse. He was fed regularly and kept in fairly clean conditions. It appears Harold cared for him, though in a tragically warped way." Claire covered her mouth, the relief breaking through her grief. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, grounding her in the moment. "Can we see him?" he asked quietly. Dr. Patel nodded. "Yes, but please go slowly. He's still processing everything. The good news is he's begun asking about you. That's a very positive sign. Just don't expect instant recognition or affection. It will take time." When Ethan and Claire entered the hospital room, the sight of their son nearly brought them both to tears. Joshua sat up in bed, small and pale against the white sheets, his red hair now duller, his eyes wary but curious. He looked up when they stepped inside. "Hi," Claire said softly, stopping a few feet from the bed, her voice trembling with love and restraint. "Hi," Joshua replied, studying her face like someone trying to match an image from a forgotten dream. You're really my mom? Claire nodded, her eyes shining. She couldn't speak, only smiled through the tears. And you're my real dad? Joshua asked, turning toward Ethan. Yes, Ethan said, his voice breaking slightly. We've been looking for you since the day you disappeared, Joshua. We never stopped. The boy's gaze dropped to his hands. Harold told me my mom died. He said everyone outside was the enemy. His brows furrowed, the confusion raw in his young voice. Why would he lie like that? Ethan glanced at Claire before answering carefully. Harold lost his own family a long time ago. It broke something in him. He thought he could start over by keeping you safe, but what he did was wrong. He hurt you and us in ways he'll never understand. Joshua hesitated. Am I going to live with you now? If that's what you want, Claire said softly, inching closer. Your room's still there, just like you left it, but we don't have to rush. We can take this one day at a time. Joshua nodded slowly, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. I don't remember you, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. But when I saw the picture on your phone, something felt familiar. Ethan smiled gently, fighting back tears. That's enough for now. We'll have plenty of time to remember together. Over the following days, Maple Hollow buzzed with the story that had gripped the entire town. A child found alive after 8 years, hidden just across the street. Reporters flooded the area, but Ethan and Claire refused every interview. Their focus was on healing, not headlines. They spent hours at the hospital beside Joshua's bed, showing him old family photos, telling stories about birthdays, vacations, the dog he once had. Slowly, tiny sparks of recognition flickered behind his uncertain eyes. Meanwhile, Harold Bennett faced a litany of charges: kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, multiple weapons violations. Inside the bunker, investigators found journals filled with his delusions, page after page detailing his descent into paranoia, his plan to rebuild the family he'd lost, his belief that the outside world had become too dangerous to survive. When Ethan later stood by the hospital window, watching his son rest peacefully for the first time in years, the weight of it all hit him. The grief for the years stolen, the miracle of what was restored. The road ahead would be long. Joshua's healing would take time, patience, and love. But for the first time in 8 years, they weren't chasing a ghost in the snow. They were a family again, whole, fragile, but together. And that was enough to begin. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in never giving up. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that remind us how even in the darkest moments, light can still be found.